The Second World War may have ended in 1945, but for some, it was only the beginning. Otto Skorzeny, scarred, charismatic, and terrifying, was more than a Nazi commander. He became a phantom embedded in global power struggles, a mercenary who crossed lines no one dared to. His escape was not a disappearance, but a transition into something darker. It just went quiet, until now. The Otto Skorzeny mystery is finally solved, and the truth behind it is not good. The scarred man who didn't disappear. The war had ended in ruins and ashes, yet Otto Skorzeny endured, a dark figure refusing to vanish into the pages of history. His face bore the marks of a lifetime of violence and conflict, most strikingly, the vertical scar that ran like a cruel stripe from his temple down to his jawline. This scar was not a random wound. It was the trophy of a brutal duel fought during his youth, one of 15 fencing matches he fought as a student in Vienna. The scar carved a fierce, almost savage impression, transforming his features into something both menacing and unforgettable. It was a brand of defiance and danger, one that Nazi propaganda would eagerly showcase to instill fear and respect, while Allied forces would plaster his visage on wanted posters as a symbol of relentless menace. Standing at an imposing 6'4", Skorzeny was not merely tall, he was a colossus, molded for leadership in the darkest of times. His physical presence was matched only by the ideological fire burning within him, a relentless ambition forged amid the turmoil of Nazi Germany's rise and sharpened by a taste for audacious, high-stakes operations that flirted with the impossible. This was a man who thrived in chaos, whose hunger for action and infamy propelled him into the spotlight. His most infamous moment, the one that etched his name into the annals of wartime legend, was a mission so daring it seemed ripped from the pages of fiction: the liberation of Benito Mussolini in 1943. Under cover of darkness, Skorzeny and his elite team descended upon a remote mountaintop hotel in Italy, their approach silent and deadly aboard gliders that landed with breathtaking precision. The operation was a symphony of calculated violence. The guards overwhelmed, Mussolini liberated, and the fascist dictator whisked away to safety under Nazi control. Adolf Hitler himself beamed with pride, elevating Skorzeny to a near-mythical status. Even Winston Churchill, his staunch enemy, couldn't help but acknowledge the sheer audacity of the feat, dubbing it one of great daring. The world was watching and fearing the man with the scar. But Skorzeny's legacy extended far beyond this headline operation. Beneath the sensational stories lay a far more unsettling truth. His shadow loomed over darker, murkier waters, those that would surface only after the war, in the uneasy peace that followed. While the world breathed a collective sigh of relief, believing the nightmare was over, Skorzeny was only beginning a new chapter. Escape by design. By 1945, Nazi Germany was a broken shell, its regime crumbling under the weight of defeat. Skorzeny, once a feared operative of Hitler's personal SS command, surrendered to the Allies. He was detained in a POW camp and soon found himself staring down charges, not only for war crimes, but also for his complicity within the sinister inner workings of the Nazi command structure. The denazification process loomed like an executioner's axe, ready to sever him from the world he once dominated. But then, in a twist as brazen as his wartime exploits, Otto Skorzeny vanished. On the night of July 27, 1948, an extraordinary event unfolded at the Dachau internment camp. 3 men arrived, clad in the uniforms of U.S. military police. They claimed official business, escorting Skorzeny to Nuremberg for a scheduled legal hearing. The world outside had no reason to doubt. The camp gates opened, and Skorzeny, dressed as a prisoner, walked out with them. No resistance, no alarms, no interruptions. The escape was seamless, except it wasn't an escape at all. The men in uniform were not who they claimed to be. Investigations later confirmed they were former SS officers masquerading as American MPs. Their access to the camp and the coordination required suggested something far more sinister than a simple jailbreak. How did they manage such a feat without interference? Why did Allied authorities remain silent, as if complicit or powerless? And most chillingly, why did Skorzeny, years later, openly boast that elements within the U.S. had a hand in orchestrating his flight from justice? Questions swirled in the shadows, questions never publicly answered but never forgotten. In the depths of classified intelligence archives, a startling truth began to emerge. This was not the desperate act of a fugitive, but the carefully planned extraction of a valuable asset. Skorzeny was not fleeing, he was being retrieved. The spider's web. After the chaos and collapse of Nazi Germany, Otto Skorzeny did not fade into obscurity or vanish into the shadows like so many of his contemporaries. Instead, under the protection of General Francisco Franco's authoritarian Spain, he re-emerged with a new purpose and a carefully crafted disguise. Spain, still bearing the scars of its own brutal civil war, was a country that offered sanctuary to the defeated and the desperate, a place where Skorzeny could weave his web far from the prying eyes of the Allies. Granted a clean identity, complete with new papers and a legitimate business front, ostensibly an import-export company, Skorzeny blended into the bustling streets of Madrid. Yet beneath this calm, sun-drenched surface, an insidious operation was growing. Skorzeny meticulously constructed a clandestine network known as Die Spinne, the Spider. This was no fanciful myth spun by post-war fiction or sensationalized conspiracy theories. It was a cold, calculating organization he himself built from the ground up, and it operated with ruthless efficiency. Unlike the oft-mythologized Odessa, which many historians now regard as largely exaggerated or even fictional, Die Spinne was real, tangible, and deadly effective. Its sole purpose was to orchestrate the escape of top SS officers, notorious war criminals, scientists with dangerous knowledge, and fervent Nazi sympathizers from Europe's grasp. Using a combination of forged Vatican passports, exploiting the chaos and bureaucracy of the post-war world, plus sympathetic officials in right-wing regimes, bribes to corrupt border guards and shadowy transit routes, Die Spinne smuggled over 600 men to safety. Argentina, Egypt, Syria, Paraguay. These countries became more than just distant lands. They were new homes for the lost architects of terror. Yet what Die Spinne facilitated was not just an exodus into oblivion, but a strategic regrouping, a calculated renaissance of an ideology that refused to die. In the shadows of exile, former Nazis didn't just seek refuge, they sought relevance. Slowly, deliberately, they wormed their way back into positions of influence. Military strategists advising fledgling dictatorships, scientists pioneering clandestine weapons projects, industrialists resurrecting networks of power and wealth. While the global community wrestled with rebuilding, these men were quietly laying down roots for a resurgence. Skorzeny was not merely an escape artist or smuggler. He was the spider at the center of an expansive web, rebuilding, cell by cell, the fractured skeleton of the Third Reich across continents and oceans. The war was over, but its ghost had not been laid to rest. Argentina's House of Ghosts. If Spain was the spider's web, then Argentina was the vast dark forest in which that web extended its reach. Argentina, under the charismatic and authoritarian Juan Perón, had thrown open its doors to European exiles of all kinds, and none were more welcome, or more dangerous, than the Nazis seeking to disappear from history. Skorzeny's influence stretched effortlessly between Buenos Aires and Madrid. To the casual observer, he was merely a businessman managing trade between Europe and South America. But behind the veneer of his import-export company lay a nerve center for the transit of ex-SS operatives, war criminals, and their families. It was also a sophisticated money laundering operation for the vast wealth looted during the Third Reich's reign: gold, jewels, artwork, and currency stashed away and funneled into legitimate channels to fund future endeavors. Whispers filled the halls of power and the dimly lit cafes of Buenos Aires. Some spoke of secret bunkers carved deep into the Patagonian wilderness, hidden from prying eyes, stocked with weapons and archives. Others claimed Skorzeny was behind the shadowy relocation of Josef Mengele, the infamous Angel of Death, protecting him from international justice as he vanished into the Argentine hinterlands. And there were even rumors, daring, almost scandalous, that Skorzeny shared a passionate, clandestine affair with First Lady Eva Peron herself, intertwining politics, power, and personal ambition in a toxic dance. Much of this remains shrouded in rumor and the fog of time, but the undeniable truth was that Skorzeny was no longer a hunted fugitive. He was thriving. In a land far from the rubble of Europe, he built something new, something frightening. With him, a dark ideology evolved, not one of nostalgic defeat, but of patient, deliberate resurgence. These men did not pine for the past, they plotted for the future. While the world saw only a convicted war criminal in exile, behind closed doors, Otto Skorzeny was something far more terrifying. The architect laying the foundations for a Fourth Reich, patiently waiting for the moment to rise again. The mercenary empire. In the turbulent 1960s, amid a world caught in the relentless grip of Cold War tensions and shadowy conflicts, Otto Skorzeny was quietly building something unprecedented. A sprawling mercenary network that would blur the lines between state and non-state warfare. This was no mere private army or freelance militia. Historians would later describe it as something akin to the sinister organizations of popular fiction, Spectre or Hydra. But this was very much a brutal reality, born from the mind of a man who had never been constrained by morality or allegiance. This entity was known as the Paladin Group, a name that masked the dark operations that thrived beneath its surface. Headquartered in Spain, under the watchful eyes of Franco's regime, Paladin was a private military contractor, unlike anything the world had seen before. Its ranks were filled with hardened veterans of the Nazi SS, fervent right-wing mercenaries, and shadowy operatives skilled in the clandestine arts of Cold War espionage and sabotage. Skorzeny positioned Paladin as an international directorship of strategic domination, offering a terrifying menu of services: guerrilla warfare training, assassinations, counterinsurgency campaigns, and covert paramilitary operations. Paladin's reach was as sprawling as it was secretive. In Spain, they became architects of terror by training Franco's secret police, the enforcers of a dictatorship obsessed with rooting out dissent. Their expertise extended beyond Europe. In Latin America, Paladin funneled arms and tactical support to fascist militias hell-bent on crushing leftist insurgencies, shaping the violent political landscapes of countries like Chile and Argentina with ruthless efficiency. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, the group allied with Arab nationalist forces, simultaneously aiding their military ambitions and crushing rival leftist rebels, all while maintaining a veil of silence so impenetrable that no official agency dared to openly confront them. Western intelligence agencies, tangled in the ideological war against communism, found Paladin to be an inconvenient but effective tool. They turned a blind eye, knowing that this apolitical, self-funded machine was wielded with deadly precision against common enemies. For Skorzeny, however, Paladin was far more than just a mercenary business. It was a prototype, a grim experiment in the future of warfare, one that transcended traditional notions of sovereignty, nationality, and ideology. It was a new kind of weapon, a decentralized mercenary network designed to operate independently of any flag or leader, durable and adaptable in a world where political landscapes shifted like sand. Despite its shadowy operations and devastating impact, no government or international body dared halt Skorzeny's mercenary empire. He moved with the assurance of a man who had slipped beyond the reach of justice, weaving his web deeper into the fabric of global conflict, unseen, yet undeniably influential: the Mossad contract. If the rise of the Paladin Group was remarkable, an even more startling episode in Otto Skorzeny's post-war career unfolded thousands of miles away in the heart of the Middle East, in a place that seemed utterly unlikely given his past: Tel Aviv. By 1963, Israeli intelligence, Mossad, was embroiled in a deadly game of espionage and assassination aimed at crippling hostile powers' military capabilities. Their target was Heinz Krug, a German-born rocket scientist who had defected to Egypt, bringing with him invaluable expertise that threatened to tip the regional balance of power. Krug was helping build Egypt's nascent weapons program, making him a high-priority mark for Israel's covert operations. In a twist that stunned even the most seasoned intelligence operatives, Mossad sought out Otto Skorzeny for this mission. The very man who had once orchestrated daring rescue missions and clandestine operations for the Nazi regime was now being called upon to execute an assassination for the Jewish state, an enemy of Nazi Germany. The reasons were as practical as they were chilling. Skorzeny was uniquely positioned. His intricate web of contacts, forged during his wartime and post-war exploits, spanned across Europe and the Middle East. He was a master of disguise, deception, and deadly precision. And crucially, he had shed any ideological loyalties, now existing solely as a mercenary, a ghostly weapon whose allegiance was to the highest bidder. Employing forged passports, covert communication networks, and meticulous planning, he tracked Krug across borders, setting a trap that no one else could. The operation was swift and ruthless. Krug was eliminated quietly, his body disposed of in a way that left no traces back to Israel or Skorzeny himself. For years, the murder remained an enigma, shrouded in secrecy. Only later did former Mossad operatives confirm the truth. It was Skorzeny who had carried out their darkest mission. He was still active, and worst of all, he was still very good at his job. The archives whisper back. For decades after the war, official narratives about Otto Skorzeny allegedly remained shrouded in silence, carefully curated to forget, deny, or obscure uncomfortable truths. History, as it was told publicly, painted him as a defeated figure, a relic of a dark past supposedly buried beneath the ashes of the Third Reich. Yet beneath the polished surface of textbooks and mainstream histories, a persistent murmur suggested fragments of truths hidden in shadowed corners, waiting for the right moment to resurface. That moment arrived with the gradual release of declassified documents, intelligence reports, and personal memoirs. The dusty files of the CIA, once locked away behind layers of secrecy, began to reveal unsettling details that many had only speculated about. Mossad agents, in their later years, allegedly recounted clandestine operations that intersected uncomfortably with the name Skorzeny. Former operatives from the West German Intelligence Service, the BND, shared whispered accounts piecing together a picture far more complex than the simple villain or pariah the public had been led to believe. These revelations did not offer a neatly packaged narrative. They did not definitively prove every conspiracy theory that had circulated in hushed tones. Instead, they confirmed a disturbing reality. Otto Skorzeny had allegedly never been truly denazified in the post-war world. His identity was reportedly scrubbed from official records, but in the labyrinth of Cold War geopolitics, it is believed he found a new purpose. While the scars on his face may have faded in the light, in the shadows of power, he allegedly became indispensable. In Madrid, Skorzeny was said to be no mere exile. Reports suggest he met with CIA operatives, exchanging information and services, becoming a bridge between old fascist networks and the emerging anti-communist agendas of Western intelligence. He allegedly played a pivotal role in setting up arms routes that fed authoritarian regimes across the Middle East, regimes that would shape decades of conflict and unrest. His influence reportedly extended beyond simple mercenary work. He allegedly oversaw paramilitary training camps, preparing fighters who would later morph into terrorist cells and insurgent groups. Perhaps most chillingly, some of the leaked documents hinted at Skorzeny's intimate knowledge, if not direct involvement, with secret NATO operations like Gladio, a covert program designed to activate right-wing sleeper militias across Europe in the event of a Soviet invasion. This clandestine network is widely believed to have been a living legacy of Cold War paranoia, a ghost army waiting silently beneath the surface of democratic societies. In this shadowy world, Skorzeny was reportedly no fugitive hunted by justice. He was a contractor, an operative whose existence was acknowledged only in whispers and denials. Governments and agencies allegedly engaged with him when convenient, then disavowed any connection. His life is thought to be a testament to the dark pragmatism of Cold War realpolitik, where former enemies were repurposed as assets and moral lines blurred beyond recognition. The 2025 leak. In the early months of 2025, an unprecedented breach allegedly shook the intelligence community to its core. A former archivist from Spain's clandestine intelligence service, who reportedly had long harbored doubts and fears about the shadows still lingering in Europe, leaked a trove of classified documents to investigative journalists. The archive was vast. Meticulous blueprints, encrypted field reports, and detailed records of financial transactions, some disguised as innocuous budget transfers, others labeled under covert code names. All appeared to bear the unmistakable signature of the Paladin Group. What stunned those poring over the files was not merely the scope or sophistication of Paladin's operations. Many had assumed the group was a relic, a ghost of the Cold War era, but the revelation that the organization had never truly ceased to exist. Instead, it allegedly evolved, mutating like a shadow organism, adapting to a new world order. And just like that, the mystery of Otto Skorzeny's later years was finally solved. But what the authorities discovered was not good at all. Rather than a clean break, the documents reportedly revealed a network fractured into cells and affiliates. Some rebranded as legitimate private military contractors, providing mercenary services in forgotten conflicts across continents. Others folded into government intelligence agencies and paramilitary divisions, their origins deliberately obscured. Yet many allegedly continued their work undetected in the murkiest corners of Europe, quietly recruiting from far-right extremist circles, grooming youth through secretive academies, and perpetuating a militant ideology under the radar. One particularly chilling dossier outlined a covert legacy program, a long-term strategic initiative designed to ensure Paladin's ideological continuity. This program reportedly targeted multiple fronts: the infiltration and manipulation of media outlets to subtly shape narratives, the stealth sponsorship of political parties across Europe to seed influence from within, and the cultivation of think tanks and youth movements to breed a new generation loyal to the cause. Investigators allegedly traced threads from this program directly to several politicians who had risen to prominence over the last decade, individuals who, without full knowledge, reportedly received covert backing from former Paladin operatives. The tentacles of this dark network are said to have reached far and wide, pulling strings beneath the surface of mainstream politics. Though Otto Skorzeny, the notorious architect behind the original Paladin Group, died in 1975, the machinery he built allegedly endured far beyond his lifetime. His legacy was no mere historical footnote. It was reportedly a living, breathing force, dormant and patient, yet ever ready to awaken. The Fourth Reich was never a fantasy. For decades, the notion of a Fourth Reich was derided and dismissed as the ramblings of fringe conspiracy theorists or the sensational backdrop for Hollywood villains. The idea was scoffed at, a shadowy myth, a paranoid fantasy conjured by alarmists fearful of the past's return. But the truth, as some investigators now believe, is far more sinister. The Fourth Reich allegedly never existed as a traditional nation-state. It did not wave flags, claim territories, or announce itself with marching parades. It was not a government with borders, nor a regime seeking global recognition. It was something far more elusive, an idea embedded in networks, hidden in shadows, and alive within systems designed to evade detection. To build this new Reich, the architects needed a figure unlike any other, a man capable of walking the fine line between ideologies, blending ruthless pragmatism with grand vision. A man who could assemble private armies, execute targeted assassinations, and sow chaos strategically. A man who could vanish from history's spotlight and yet remain the puppet master behind the scenes. Skorzeny was not just a war criminal frozen in time. He is widely regarded as the perfect architect of a new age of shadow warfare and ideological persistence. The foundations he laid were not dismantled with his death. Instead, they allegedly evolved, morphing with the changing geopolitical landscape, modernized for new tactics, armed with new technologies, and fueled by renewed extremist fervor. We suspected him all along, we knew the danger, yet reportedly failed to halt its advance. And now, as the leaks expose the depth and resilience of this dark machine, the warning is clear. The Fourth Reich, in its shadowy form, might be alive, and it's poised to strike again. Could something like this still be happening today, in silence, behind headlines? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching this video with us, and catch you in the next one.